Hansel and Gretel. You know, folks say that smartphones and GPS have destroyed everyone's sense of direction these days. Nobody under the age of 30 knows the real way to get from here to there. Of course, the way to do that is that you print out a page of MapQuest directions, you set them on your passenger seat, you're not able to look at them anyway because you're driving, and eventually you end up so lost that you can't even figure out how to get back to any of the roads that are on your printout. But, it turns out that getting directions dates all the way back to fairy tale land, as we find our friends Hansel and Gretel out geocaching in the woods. Here are their secrets. If times are tough in your family of 4, you might consider a variety of solutions. Store-brand foods, carpooling, shorter showers, taking your kids out in the woods and leaving them, and so forth. In this particular story, a woodsman and his new trophy wife opt for door number 4. Alas, Mr. and Mrs. Lumberjack are not about to win any awards for subtle planning. While some children have to worry about accidentally walking in on their dad getting busy with their stepmom, Hansel and Gretel instead wander in on their folks planning to abandon them in the forest. Rather than make a quick call to social services, however, Hansel spends his last few hours loading up his pockets with white rocks. When the parents then lead the kids off into the woods, Hansel calmly dribbles a, completely unnoticed, rock trail behind them, which he and his sister later follow straight back to their house under the moonlight. In a shocker, they don't get a terribly warm welcome upon their return. Before long, the woodsman's wife is again planning to fix her problems by abandoning the kiddos out in the middle of nowhere. Unable to get to his rocks, this time Hansel is forced to lay down a trail of breadcrumbs while he and Gretel are being led off into oblivion. This admittedly is not a horrible idea. It's definitely better than dropping, say, a trail of ice cubes. In the end, it doesn't work, though, as birds eat the crumbs and destroy the kids' map home. Now stranded for real, Hansel and Gretel wander around for a few days until they stumble onto one of your more common sights deep in the forest, a house made entirely out of candy. So logically, they start eating it. For the second time this episode, that leads to a homeowner that is less than pleased. But this time, instead of a prince-turned-beast, it's a terrifying old witch. She's nearly blind, but she takes the tack of promising the kids real food, which probably means drywall, and soft beds to lure them inside because her real plan is to pork them up and eat them. Because there's nothing like a delicious German child when you live in a house made entirely of candy. The witch forces Gretel to be her slave and locks Hansel in a cage for feeding. Despite some tricks by Hansel to convince her that he's still skinny, the witch eventually loses her patience and orders Gretel to fire up the oven. Then, as Gretel preheats to 400 degrees, the witch decides she'd also like some Gretel gruel for an appetizer. She slyly tells Gretel to lean into the oven to see if it's hot enough. Gretel's no idiot, though. She responds with the famous, "Oh, I don't understand what you mean, how about you get into the oven and show me how" trick, which somehow totally works. Gretel slams the oven door shut, crisis averted. Though I do hope that oven is self-cleaning. Prior to getting the hell out of there, Hansel and Gretel prudently scope out the house and discover that the witch's love of candy was closely rivaled by her propensity to hoard valuable jewels. The kids loot the place and take off for home, which they now somehow know how to locate. Maybe the blind witch also owned a lot of maps. When they get there, they learn that their bitchy stepmother is conveniently croaked, and once they ship the witch's jewelry off to cash for gold, the kids and the woodsman are pretty much set for life. Now somebody just needs to call Dateline NBC.